Hello, I'm Amina Christensen, and I'm the Nordic Marketing Manager at Innofactor Norway. And I'm very pleased to welcome you today to our webinar on IT security. Our principal consultant and many years Microsoft MVP, Olav Tvedt, will be walking you through the slides. We expect the session to last for about 45 minutes. If you're not able to stay with us throughout the whole session, a recording of this webinar will be available tomorrow on our websites. Regarding questions, if you would like to submit your questions as they occur to you through the presentation, you can type them in the webinar panel, and Olav will try to answer them at the end of the session. The floor is yours, Olav.
Halt, friend or enemy. We have basically used some kind of controlled access during all humanities. In most war movies, the role about halt, friend or enemy will be used, but we are pretty sure that already back in really old ages, we still used controlled access to be able to access certain levels of houses, buildings, treasures, and whatever. But in the beginning, we could only use visual appearances and visual identifications. So identities have developed. The same way have safe storage. We have used locked boxes, we have used locked rooms, we have dig down secrets for centuries. So safe storage is something that we also have always been around. But a little bit newer technology is maybe encryption, but we still have encrypted for about 1700 years or something like that. One of the most earliest and well working encryption was Caesar ciphering. Caesar ciphering was maybe something like this. You had something you wanted to make sure that nobody else understands, and you can decrypt if you have the right key. So just like let's take my example here and type in what I had in my presentation. Go into guess mode. I know the code, but just tried to encrypt decrypt with a guess mode, and we will see that it was actually friend that was the strange word I was using. And this is done by encrypting movement in the number of letters in the alphabet. So even encryption are quite old. But we have started to encrypt with known and unknown variables. That makes it hard to encrypt and decrypt if you don't have the right certificates. And that's a technology we have been using since 1940 something. 1947, I think it was commercial use, but it was developed during the Second World War. So we know that the basics are taken care of by using methods we have known for years and years and years. But we need to add layers and levels to our security level. We cannot just assume something anymore. We need to make sure that we have the right level and that and we are using the layers we need. So example on the layers will be identity, device management, and information protections. So we have three basics we are always talking about that we need to consider is the identity, the devices, and the information itself. And we have three different levels, or we can have more levels, but I have divided into basic, extended, and advanced. For instance, when we're coming to identity, you would have a cloud presence. You will use passwords, and then you are at the basic level. But maybe we need something more to extend the security. Then we add multi-factor authentication, conditional access, and monitoring. If we are more in need of even more advanced security levels, we will start to use monitoring with automated responses and automated reactions to different things that happens. The same thing will be there with devices and information. You have different basic, extended, and advanced levels. Comparing this into Office 365 and Microsoft 365 Word, we will see that Office 365 will basically be in the basic and some extended functionalities because you have conditional access, for instance, in Office 365. But if you want the entire extended stack, you actually need to go to the EMS E3, and if you want the advanced, you will use the EMS E5. If we are translating this into Microsoft 365, it will be Microsoft 365 E5 will take the basics and the extended, and if you want the more advanced features, you will go over to the E5. So this is just to show you that the difference between getting the suite as an Office and an EMS additions, and maybe buying Windows 10 as a third part, because Microsoft 365 are Office, EMS, and Windows 10. So it will cover the same basis, but you have more Microsoft 365 stuff because Windows 10 are integrated, and you have some more different engines you can use. Microsoft on their side have done what they can do to make sure that your data and your identities are secured. For instance, they use physical security on their data centers. And if you get past the physical security and get to the disks, it's themselves, the computers, the data storage, you will see that they are using both BitLocker on the disks, but they are also encrypting the files. So you have two levels of security on your data. And they also make sure that if the files are moved or downloaded, uploaded, you will use in-transit encryptions. If you want extended security, you can use the lockbox functionality. Lockbox functionality are currently an Exchange feature. So if you have mailboxes that somebody at Microsoft need to repair, or some reason why they have to go into them, if you have set up the lockbox, that's an E5 feature, you will get an email asking for permission if they are allowed to go into your mailboxes. Lockbox feature might be extended to other features as well. You can also bring your own key if you want to encrypt with your own keys instead of using the Azure key system, but be aware if you are using bring your own key and you are losing the key, it's your own fault if you cannot decrypt anything anymore. So that's Microsoft side. Let's take a look on the side we are connected to, what we can start to think about, and that's usually started with that you have an on-premise Active Directory. You extended it to Azure AD, and the main reason why most people, most company, organization extended it was that they wanted to use different application provided, and Office 365 was basically the first one for a lot of companies. But it have grown up, so you have DocuSign, Google, Box, a lot of third parties that will use Azure AD as your identity foundations. So that means actually that your identity is starting to grow and getting more and more important. You can also add your partners, so you have the business-to-business side of Azure AD, or you can add customers, so you have business to customer or customer to business functionalities. And that actually means that your identity getting more and more important to protect, because you need to make sure that the identity, that's the control panel to everything you are going to do in the cloud, because of all the different cloud you can cooperate with. You actually need to make sure that your identity is protected the best possible way. So then we can add conditional access, we can set up multi-factor authentication and a lot of other features. But when we are setting it up, it's important to not go bananas, because it's quite easy to just figure out that I'm going to set everything to high secure, and forget usability. Or a lot of people just say that usability is the keyword and they forget security. So you need to know when to use the different parts. When you have low data sensitivity, you can prioritize usability. Little security you always should have in place, but it's not that important. But as the data get more sensitive, you will increase the amount of security until security is more important than usability. And what you will discover then is that your users might start to act up, because it's quite easy to figure out the good old days when we could just create group policies, set up the system, make it hard to work. You couldn't do anything except when you were at the office, and the user used it. But the user are getting more used to not being forced to do what we want them to do, but they would rather actually figure out how they can use it the best way possible. So we need to make sure that everything we are doing are done with the user experience in mind. Because if we give the user tools and we set rules for those tools, most likely the user will do something to the tools to make it work the way they want it to work. So we need to make sure that we have usability and security and monitoring to make sure that if something happens, we know about it. If the user are starting to use the new systems, we know about it, and we have made it the best way for the user. So let's start with the key thing, and the key thing is access control. What tools do we have to make sure that we can make the access control better than just who are you, friend or enemy? We want to make sure that access control works by giving the best user experience at the same time as we maintain security at the highest possible level without affecting the user. And most people know about the conditional access, where we can set up some condition based on what group you are and what you are looking for, and if you're going to grant access. But the main thing with conditional access is that it's statical. You can say that this is a trusted network, and if you're outside the trusted network, you have to use multi-factor authentication. And that will make it quite annoying for the user when they are still on a laptop given by the IT department or the organization, and they are on a trusted network, or they are just at home and doing the stuff they are used to. So then we got identity protection instead, because identity protection we can actually add in different dynamical parameters. So if your user are logging on the same computer from the same network, same location, same device, and so on, everything works okay. And if there are small changes, as long as they are not triggered as a high risk, the user will continue to log on. But the minute the user starts to do something strange, he will actually be asked to do something more. So identity protection is a dynamical way of saying that if you are behaving like a good user, we can see the pattern you have used the last 14 days and more, we will actually know that you don't have done something to cause awareness. But if you start to use a different device and you are logging on different networks, you might be asked to authenticate by using multi-factor authentication. And when we combine conditional access with identity protection, and you will see in the console that you can combine it, you can actually make conditional access rules with sign-in risk. So you can have a dynamical conditional access. Let's just go in and see quick look on the risk-based conditional access in theory and praxis. We can see here that we have different identities logging on from, for instance, Microsoft Azure AD on known devices, maybe with Windows Defender 8P installed, and you are logging in from a corporate network on a client apps that's approved. but it will still go through machine learning from Microsoft that collects 30 terabytes and more data every day to figure out if you are doing something strange. And you have also the possibility to create the policies, and everything will be evaluated, and you will be set up to low risk, medium risk, or high risk. And when that's done, you will get access based on the risk. So that's quite cool. So just let's go in and see the setup. I have a VM here. Let's log on. And we can see that we have conditional access, where we can create policies. A policy will apply to a set of users, selected user and group, all users, and it can also be applied to directory roles. For instance, we can find if you are an Exchange administrator or global administrator, we can have different conditions for you to log on. We just select all users. I'm not going to apply it now, but we will say all users, all cloud apps, on the what kind of conditions, device platform, if you are logging on a Windows phone, and Windows done, and we will only set a condition based on those platforms. We can also add locations and say that this will apply to everything except when you are on a trusted network. So if you're using Windows Phone, and are on trusted networks, we can deep dive down to client apps and device states, but we said just done. And we'll say we will grant you access or we will block you access. So this is the conditions and what type of access you are allowed. So this is just static setup. We cannot adjust it to any more than what the rule says. But if we go into the Azure ID identity protection, we can see that we can create a user risk policy and a sign-in risk policy. A user risk policy will be stuff you are doing all the time, like different networks, different experiences from the user side, and you will get a higher risk level. So if the risk is high enough, you will have to do something. Notice that when we are in Azure AD identity protection, we can only create one user risk policy and one logon risk policy. So we have set it here for high and done in there. Condition was all users high and required password change. So if something happens, we require a password change for the user. We can also use the review to see how many users that will be impacted by this. Enable on and off, save, and we're good to go. And the same thing is in sign-in risk policy. With the sign-in risk policy, it will be the same, but we don't have reset password. We have allow or block access, but we can have allow with require multi-factor authentication. And this is quite nice, but it's only one set of rules, right? It's one sign-in risk policy, and I would have different based on different groups. And that's where the combination of conditional access and Azure Identity Protection comes in. We can create a new policy, or we can use one I've already created here, target risk-based. So with target risk-based, we can see that I have created a rule. If you are one selected user called Megan Bowen, and you are using SharePoint, the condition is to use sign-in risk. And you can see that I have gone down to medium. So for all the users, the global base rule is high risk. If you have high risk, you have to use multi-factor authentication or you are blocked. But my setting was multi-factor authentication if you are on high risk. But in here we have said if you are high risk, we will block access. So we will show you how this works by just showing you a video I just recorded just about an hour ago instead of doing the live demonstration, because it takes some time to show it. So the first thing is to show you that it works with my regular user called Olav. You can see here I'm starting a Tor browser that's a low risk operation to medium risk operation, but this one is medium, so I'm logging on the Tor browser using my Olav user, enter password, and nothing should happen because this is still not a high risk setup. So we can see that a Tor browser, that's a browser that emulates VPN networks around the world and are actually on a blacklist on Microsoft, but it's still a low risk, low to medium risk. So the combination of the browser and the network will make it into a medium. So if I had a medium setup for all users, I wouldn't have been able to go in here. So I will just show you how it works when Megan start to do the same thing. And on the Megan setup, I have had one in private browser, because in private will be basically somewhere in low and medium, depending on the computer and some other factors, of course. So we are logging in with Megan in the Edge in private browser. And we will see that it should be working. I have enabled MFA, but you can still skip it for 14 days. And she's in. So I will try to do the same on a Tor browser. Try to log into SharePoint, because it was only on SharePoint we created the rule for Megan that she's not allowed in medium risk scenarios. So Megan is logging on, and you cannot access this right now. So that's basically because she is on a too high security score to be allowed in. So that's just the setup. So by combining risk-based and conditional access, we can actually make sure that Megan is not annoyed if she is sitting on her ordinary laptop, if she's using a network she is used to, and so on. But when she starts to do something that's differ from the pattern, or start to use something that will collide with the securities, like infected devices, she have leaked credentials, suspicious IPs, unfamiliar locations, impossible travel, and so on. There are a lot of points that will give you scores. We can go in and see in the Azure ID protection and take a look on the user. We will see that user flag for risk should be Megan, because she have done something she shouldn't have done. It will take about somewhere between 5 to 20 minutes, usually 5 to 10 minutes, before the recent activities will appear here, but I have done it earlier today as well. And you can see sign in from anonymous IP addresses. I also did a user risk experience, but because it's so hard to emulate and you don't know when you will hit it, I only have the screenshots. But this is what happened. I had set up the user risk that you saw. It was for all user. User risk was set to high, and the control was require password change. And suddenly, after doing a lot of tests, my OneDrive popped up and stated your account is at risk. Okay, let's verify them, because to help you and only you get back, we need to verify your identity. So just click on the verify. You have already set up the MFA, and you are ready to get the text code and put in the code. Click verify. And you have to update your password, because that was the process you have to go through, because we discovered that you have a user risk experience then we need to change your password, or I can have locked your account. But it's better to set up, just ask them to do a user risk experience. Everything here is actually set up, so you need to make sure you have MFA ready. And I will just show you very quick something here that I have a short script created in my tools, because you should know if you have MFA status on your users. So I'm just going to show you an easy script that you should run before creating this setup for all your users. Just need to connect. Oh, sorry, it was not enabled on this one. Let's just do it on this one then. Let's connect to the service. Using my Temula account. Connected. And I'm just running a query with get MSOL user to get the authentication methods. Like that. And I will write the output. And you can see that I have some users with MFA, and I have some users without MFA. So 2 of my users have MFA enabled, activated. They have been asked to turn it on, but 16 haven't enabled it yet, but they have been asked to set it on. So this is an easy way to just figure out have the people registered for MFA yet. So now I know that the users haven't done their work, and I can push them out. And you can also create a group to add them on to when they have enabled MFA, and they will automatically join a group, and the group does require MFA and multi-factor authentications when they are accessing web browsers like Megan did. So then we know that the identity, the first part, are protected. So the second part should be devices, but devices is Intune, and we have device management going on for a long time, but we have extended it with the Windows 10 Defender and the possibility to use the Windows 10 Defender ATP or the Windows Defender ATP, because it will also run on older version, and the Defender will also expand support for different mobile devices. So let's go to information itself. The ultimate information protections is when the information protects itself. That actually means that just using BitLocker is not secure, because if you have BitLocker and the file are being copied or sent or something else, it's no longer protected. So we need to make sure that the file have the protection in itself. And then we will use Microsoft Information Protection. Microsoft Information Protection will be discovering your data. You will classify your data, and you can protect your data, and you can of course monitor your data. And everything will go across devices, app, cloud, services, and on-premises. So Microsoft Information are actually just collection of information protection tools like the Windows protection, and you have the Azure Information Protection. And I will just talk a little bit about what's called Azure Information Protection now, but it's everything are part of the Microsoft Information Protection family, and you will use unified labeling. I'm not using unified right now because it's not totally ready. It's in a preview, but it's possible to start to test it out. But basically, we can say that if you have an E3 license, and that will be Office 365 E3 with with EMS E3, or you have the Microsoft 365 E3, or you have just bought the Azure Information Protection P1. A lot of different ways to get information protections. But if you have the basic version, you have the classification and labeling, you can encrypt and write management, and you can track and report, but it will not automate anything. If you have the E5 or the P2 version, you can set up for recommendation, you can set it up for automation, and you can set it up for AIP scanner or Cloud App Security scanner that I would show you a little bit later. So let's do a quick demo here as well. I have set it up with some policies, so I will show you the setup. I'm easily modified. I have created 2 new labels, and the 2 new labels are one Olav files and one Innofactor. We want to make sure if you are typing in anything with Innofactor in a document, we will make sure it's protected, and I have set it up to be able to share it with different companies, authenticated users, Innofactor, and the company that we are working in. So this is the basic setup. It should also document use watermark on the document, and it should look for the condition that's just say if you are using Innofactor in any document, we should know about it, and it will recommend you to do changes, labeling and security. So this is just a recommendation. So if you type in Innofactor, we will make sure that we protect the you get the option to protect the document without having to think about it. So let's go for Olav files. This is the most important one, right? So if Olav is used in a document, it will not protect it, but we will watermark it, and we will even give it a header, and we will give it a watermark, and it's no longer recommended it automatically. And the condition is if you type in something like stupid Olav, that's the condition. So if you type in stupid Olav, we want it to actually label it. I recorded a video in this one as well because it takes some time to set it up and run it. So just to save time, I've recorded a quick video, and the video is this one. I start by just typing Innofactor, and to hurry up the process, and instead of waiting for the automation to kick in, because it will take a little time, maybe some minutes before it kick in, I'll just go into the save document, give it a name, save it, and clicking save, it will process the policies and figure out that it's recommended to label this file as Innofactor. Do you want to change it now? And this is automation. This is E5, right? It's not E3, because with E3 you could have selected the same labeling, but you have to select it. So let's do another document where we are going in and stating that stupid Olav. Try to save the document. And because it's stupid Olav, we need to take some actions, right? So when it's stupid Olav, save it. You'll see that it will no longer recommend anything. It will just say that it's Cosmic Top Strange document. And I will not be able to change it because I do not have the permissions to change it. So that's the automated ways of doing stuff. If we were supposed to do this the manual way, we can do it just by going in, starting Word, create a new document, something, and I can still label it as Olav files. And this is the manual part. This is the E3 process, but the automation process that I showed you earlier are the E5 processes. And you want the E5 because you want to make sure that if you type in some sensitivity informations, it will be catched up, and you can use built-in labels. You can search for built-in expressions, or you can create your own expressions. And you can say if somebody says Innofactor 3 times in a document, it will be protected. The monitoring part is, of course, portal. There are so many portals, so it's getting dizzy is not hard, because you don't know what portal you should use and where the portal are located and so on. But basically, we can go in to check out the Azure Active Directory Identity Protection portal. We can go into the Azure AD Security Overview, and we can use Cloud App Security. Quite recently, Azure Sentinel have started to appear as a word that quickly grabs attention when you're talking about security. The big thing with Azure Sentinel is that you can collect everything you have from the portals or the monitoring in Microsoft Cloud, but you can also add third-party connections to your on-premises stuff. So you can import it from other third-party cloud services or your own third-party applications, devices, and so on, and create your custom build interfaces. So if you are setting up the right Azure Sentinel, the Sentinel portal, you can create a portal just with all identity, computer management, and stuff related for a group of admin, and you can create a different Azure Sentinel portal for different types of administrators. It's out in a preview, but it's still some work, so I will not show you too much there, but I will just quickly show you some Cloud App Security stuff before time runs out. Let's begin by just going to Azure Active Directory, and you can see that you have security overview, and you can see something on what's happening. Medium risk users, unprotected risk, risky sign-ins, and so on and so on. So you have some overview here. You should also be aware of the Identity Secure score. It's a preview now, but it will tell you some good advice that you should enable MFA for Azure AD privilege roles, require MFA for all users, and so on. So this could be a good place to start as well. Azure Identity Protection, we had a quick look on, but we also can see risk events, vulnerabilities, and you have the overview with different information. But let's just jump into Cloud App Security before time runs out. Cloud App Security are used for shadow IT, for instance. I want to see if we have some discovered apps here. We can see that I have a snapshot report, but I'm just changing it over to my Windows 10 endpoint users. This is a new features that just arrived earlier this year, and it makes it possible to collect information from Windows Defender clients, but they have to have Windows Defender ATP license and the process enabled. But then I will collect information from the endpoint computers as well as my endpoint firewalls and network devices. So I can see that we have discovered 43 apps. I can list the apps, I can sort the apps based on risk to figure out that we might have some apps that could be dangerous on my device. But I don't have anybody down. Yeah, I have one in red score. I can see what IP addresses have been used. I can see users being monitored. It's only my demo user, but we can see the upload, the traffic, transactions, what machines are used in here. So we get a good feedback on the usage. But I want to deep dive and see my connected apps. security. Connected apps, you can see that I connected to Office 365, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive. I can also add Amazon Web Services, Box, Dropbox, G Suite, and so on and so on. And with these connections, it makes it possible for me to monitor, for instance, what's happening in OneDrive. So in OneDrive, we have the dashboard with the data users, how many users, activity charts, and a lot of feedbacks. We can see account, what's the user being used the most, sort by user, we can see activity logs, and we can see alerts. So still, this is just monitoring, but this is an E5 product. Cloud App Security is an E5 product. But I can go down and just start to see it on policies. So I want to automate processes. On policies, you can see that you have already a lot of Microsoft created policies, about 22 or 21 or 22 Microsoft created policies that you can do something and changes on, but we can see that we have logon from a risky IP address, 16 open alerts, publicly shared confidential files. Okay, that doesn't sound good, right? So just click into publicly shared files, and we can go in and we can see what should we do, and we have the edit and preview result here. So that will show me that we have Megan that have shared out a lot of files she shouldn't have shared out. So I will take you quickly through a custom created policy. So I have created a policy myself with some discoveries. It's a access control. If the owner is Megan, and we can have more owners or just one owner, and the access level is publicly, internet, public, or external. So that will say that if Megan have shared files, and if she have shared files since last modifies this year, and edit and preview results, I can see that she actually have a lot of files. Clicking on this one, you will see that everywhere. You can actually just use the monitoring tool and say that, okay, Megan have shared some files, let's put it in quarantine. It's either user or admin quarantine, or we can just apply classification label, or we can remove all external users by make it private. So this is the result on the currently scan. So I know that I have find something. So the filter is good. I can apply the filter only to selected folders or all files excluded selecting folders, and all file owners, and so on and so on. But the great thing is here that we can create governance. So if this is on a SharePoint Online or in OneDrive for Business, you will see it's basically the same settings. We can automate the process. So instead of me having to right click and say that this file shouldn't be shared, make private, we can actually go down and do the same thing in the automated process. For instance, remove collaborators. We can put in quarantine, or we can remove all externals or make private. Let's go for the make private. Update. And now every time that Megan B try to make something externally available, it will be made private. So this is just one of the usage we have of Cloud App Security. We can automate the process. It's the same tool that we are using if we want to label. Maybe know the built-in AIP scanner functionality to on-premise mark files with labels or protections. To do the same thing on your SharePoint on OneDrives, you have to use Cloud App Security. So for the user experience, we can see that if I open a document, this is a little bit back more to the AIP part. We can see that if I'm opening a protected document like this one, we could label it from here, but I'm just going to open to show you something new that's appeared about a week or two ago in Office. and that's that we have the protection when we have the client installed. We have the track and revoke inside the document. We don't have to use the web page. We will use the web page, but you don't have to remember the link to the web page, or you don't have to start the AIP client. You can just go and track and revoke from in here. So if you have sent something that you should have sent out, or if the Cloud App Security haven't catched it, you can go in here and see that somebody have tried to open my documents, but only user that shouldn't be able to access it. We have the summary, we have the map, and we can change the settings. So if somebody tried to open a document that I have sent out and they get denied, I will actually get an email. Or if anybody open it and are allowed or denied, you will get an email. So if I figure out this document shouldn't be sent out at all, I just click revoke access and it will be revoked. The 30 days stated here is depending on the policy that you have created, because you can have offline viewing of documents up to 30 days, of course. But if you have 7 days, it will be 7 days. But if they are online, it will check the policy, and if it's revoked, it will be revoked instantly. There are some new licenses. We have the identity and threat protection and information protection and compliance. And this is if you are on a Microsoft 365 E3 and you want some of the features like the threat protections, Cloud App and so on, but you don't want to go the entire step to E5, you can actually just buy the identity and threat protection. Or if you want the advanced compliance and Azure Information Protection P2, the automation part, you can buy the information protection and compliance. But if you're buying both of them, you should rather just buy the E5 instead of the E3. But this is, if you want one of them, you can buy some as single product or some as just in the bundles. So that should be the slide decks for now. If you are going to a SharePoint conference in Las Vegas in May, you can use my last name as discount code and you will save $50. If you have already signed up, you can just connect with me when I'm over there and we can continue the discussions. So that should be everything for me. The Twitter address is Olav Tvedt. The blogs where I usually post every presentation and stuff like that will be olavtvedt@blogspot.com, and that should be my slides.